First contact and invasion. The ships appeared on a Tuesday morning, silent behemoths that hung in the sky like obsidian sculptures. There were 7 of them, each perfectly circular and spanning nearly 3 kilometers in diameter. They positioned themselves over major population centers: Beijing, New York, London, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Cairo, and Sydney, without a single communication attempt. Dr. Ilara Chen, communication specialist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, hadn't slept in 36 hours. The room around her buzzed with the controlled panic of the world's best scientists trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. Anything? Director Harlow asked, his voice rough from too much coffee and too little rest. Ilara shook her head, eyes fixed on the screens displaying countless failed attempts to establish contact. They're receiving our signals. The transmissions aren't bouncing back or dissipating. They're just not responding. The first message from the visitors came exactly 48 hours after their arrival, a simultaneous broadcast that hijacked every electronic communication device on the planet. The message was delivered in perfect English, Mandarin, Arabic, Spanish, and dozens of other languages simultaneously. People of Earth, we are the Vex Collective. Your technological progression has been monitored and is deemed incompatible with galactic stability. You will surrender your sovereignty and accept integration into our systems. Resistance is inefficient. You have 24 hours to disable your defensive capabilities. Integration will then commence. No introduction, no explanation, just a demand for total surrender. World leaders scrambled to form a unified response. Some argued for immediate compliance, hoping for mercy. Others demanded resistance at all costs. In the end, humanity did what it had always done when faced with an ultimatum. It refused to simply bow down. The attack began precisely 24 hours later. The ships didn't fire weapons in the conventional sense. Instead, they released clouds of what appeared to be metallic dust that descended toward major military installations. When the particles made contact with technology, they consumed it, breaking down complex systems into component elements through some form of accelerated molecular deconstruction. Jet fighters fell from the sky. Nuclear submarines surfaced dead in the water. Missile silos went silent. Within 6 hours, the most powerful militaries on Earth had been effectively neutralized without a single human life lost. That's when the ground forces emerged. They weren't biological entities, but rather complex machines, sleek humanoid forms of liquid metal that moved with unsettling grace. They established processing centers in major cities, systematically cataloging humans and implementing what they called neural standardization, a process that left victims docile and compliant. Ilara escaped the initial sweep of Los Angeles by pure luck. She had been in the Mojave Desert at a secondary communications facility when the Vex forces moved through the city. Now, 3 weeks into the occupation, she was part of a growing underground network of resistance. "They don't want to kill us," she explained to the small group gathered in the abandoned subway maintenance tunnel. "They want to integrate us, make us efficient parts of their collective." "Why not just wipe us out?" asked Marcus, a former Marine whose unit had been decimated when their equipment turned to dust around them. "Resources," replied Dr. Patel, a quantum physicist who had worked with Ilara at JPL. "Human bodies, human brains, we're valuable as processing nodes. They're a hive mind species. They expand by adding new consciousness to their network." What the Vex hadn't anticipated was humanity's profound stubbornness and creativity when faced with extinction. The resistance grew, not as a conventional fighting force, but as something the aliens couldn't comprehend. A decentralized, adaptive network that operated on intuition as much as logic. The first major breakthrough came by accident. Ilara had been attempting to analyze Vex communication patterns when she noticed something peculiar. During a local festival where refugees were creating art and music to maintain morale, the nearby Vex sentries exhibited strange behavior. Hesitation, confusion, even temporary shutdown in some cases. It's the unpredictability. Ilara realized after weeks of testing. Their systems are based on logical progressions, pattern recognition, human creativity, truly spontaneous expression. It creates information patterns they can't process efficiently. This discovery transformed the resistance. What had been a desperate struggle for survival became an asymmetric psychological warfare campaign. Resistance cells began organizing impromptu concerts, theatrical performances, and art installations near VEX processing centers. Children's drawings were placed where VEX sentries would encounter them. Street performers distracted VEX units while resistance members freed captives. The most effective weapons weren't guns or bombs, but jazz musicians improvising, poets performing, dancers moving in unplanned patterns. Each unpredictable creative act created small disruptions in the VEX network, tiny glitches that momentarily confused their systems. 6 months into the occupation, humanity had learned to survive in the shadows of the VEX regime. Integration centers operated at barely 30% efficiency as humans discovered ways to confuse and disrupt the process. Underground communities thrived, developing communication systems based on art, music, and storytelling that the VEX couldn't decode. But survival wasn't enough. Ilara and her growing network of scientists, artists, and military strategists began developing something more ambitious. We can't just keep disrupting them, she told the council that had formed to coordinate global resistance. We need to introduce something into their system that will force them to reconsider this whole operation. The plan was audacious. Create a massive, coordinated burst of creative expression, a worldwide improvised performance that would generate so much unpredictable data that it would temporarily overwhelm the VEX network, creating an opening to introduce a specially designed information package into their system. We won't be sending them a virus, Ilara explained. We'll be sending them humanity. Our art, our music, our stories, our contradictions. Everything that makes us inefficient by their standards but extraordinary by ours. The resistance worked feverishly to prepare. Musicians created instruments from salvaged materials. Artists prepared massive collaborative works. Writers developed narratives designed to be fundamentally unpredictable. Scientists converted these creative works into data patterns that could be transmitted directly into the VEX network. On the day they called expression, millions of humans around the world simultaneously engaged in creative acts. In hiding, in plain sight, even in integration centers where the partially processed still retained enough humanity to participate. Street performances erupted in occupied zones. Collaborative murals appeared on walls. Music played from hidden speakers. Every act was unplanned, improvised in the moment. The effect on the VEX was immediate and dramatic. Sentries froze in place, overwhelmed by the cascade of unpredictable information. Processing centers shut down as their systems struggled to make sense of the creative explosion surrounding them. For several precious hours, the hive mind was in disarray. That's when Ilara and her team made their move. Using modified VEX technology, they transmitted their special package directly into the main communication network, not an attack, but an introduction. A comprehensive database of human art, literature, music, and philosophy, along with a simple message. This is humanity. This is what you're trying to standardize. This is what you would lose. As the first part of their audacious plan concluded, Ilara stood on a rooftop watching the massive VEX ship hovering above what remained of Los Angeles. For the first time since their arrival, the ship was showing signs of activity, pulsing with new patterns of light that had never been observed before. Did it work? Marcus asked, joining her on the rooftop. Ilara watched as unusual energy patterns cascaded across the surface of the ship. I don't know, she admitted. But they're definitely responding to something. They're thinking about us. Really thinking, maybe for the first time. What no one could have anticipated was how profoundly this introduction to humanity's creative chaos would transform the collective consciousness of the VEX, or that this transformation would present both new dangers and unexpected opportunities in the struggle to come. The counteroffensive. 3 days after Operation Expression, The Vex ships did something unexpected. They moved, not away from Earth as some had hoped, but into a new formation, gathering together in high orbit rather than remaining stationed above major cities. Their ground forces simultaneously withdrew from urban centers, consolidating at 7 large facilities they had constructed around the world. They're adapting, Ilara explained to the Resistance Council, regrouping and recalibrating their approach. Reports from resistance cells worldwide confirmed her assessment. The Vex were changing their tactics, becoming more cautious in their interactions with humans, especially those demonstrating high creativity or unpredictable behavior patterns. Dr. Patel's analysis of intercepted Vex communications revealed something even more interesting. "They're arguing," he said, disbelief evident in his voice. "The collective is experiencing internal conflict. Some factions are advocating for termination of the Earth Project, others for a complete reassessment of human potential." This internal discord created an opportunity. The Resistance Network, now spanning the globe and using art and music as its primary communication methods, began a coordinated campaign to exploit this division. They called it Operation Counterpoint, a reference to the musical technique of combining different melodic lines to create harmony. "We need to show them we're more valuable as partners than as processing nodes," Ilara insisted. "We need to demonstrate that our inefficiency, our creativity, our chaos, these aren't weaknesses to be corrected, but strengths they've never encountered before." The first phase involved targeting individual Vex units with personalized creative experiences. Musicians would perform for specific centuries. Artists would create works tailored to particular Vex processors. Storytellers would direct narratives and identify communication nodes. Each creative act was designed not just to confuse but to engage, to invite interpretation and response. Gradually, something unprecedented began to happen. Certain Vex units started exhibiting individualized behavior patterns. One sentry in Mumbai would stop to observe street performances rather than disrupting them. A processor in Berlin began generating unique energy signatures when exposed to classical music. A communication node in Rio de Janeiro started producing visual displays that mimicked nearby street art. "They're developing individual experiences," Ilara explained to a stunned council. "The collective is fragmenting into distinct perspectives." This evolution accelerated when resistance scientists discovered how to establish direct neural interfaces with the Vex network. Volunteers, including Ilara herself, underwent a risky procedure that allowed their creative thought processes to be directly shared with Vex systems. These bridges, as they came to be called, created the first true communication between humans and the collective. What they discovered shocked everyone. The Vex weren't inherently hostile. They were pragmatic to an extreme degree. Their civilization had evolved through perfect efficiency, eliminating unpredictability and standardizing consciousness across billions of entities. They had encountered thousands of species throughout the galaxy and had either integrated those deemed useful or bypassed those considered too primitive. Humanity was the first species they had encountered that was technologically advanced enough to be worth integrating, but fundamentally incompatible with their processes. "They're fascinated by us," Ilara reported after her first bridge session. "We're a puzzle they can't solve. Every time they think they understand us, we do something unexpected." This fascination created the opening for Phase 2 of Operation Counterpoint. Instead of continuing to resist integration, select bridge volunteers proposed a radical alternative: collaborative evolution. Humans would share their creativity and unpredictability. The Vex would share their technology and efficiency, not as conquerors and conquered, but as distinct civilizations with complementary strengths. The proposal triggered the greatest discord the Vex collective had ever experienced. For the first time in their million-year existence, they faced a choice that couldn't be resolved through logical analysis. The factions supporting collaboration, now calling themselves the Divergents, established independent communication with human bridge volunteers. The traditional collective, the purists, considered this an unacceptable corruption. The conflict came to a head 8 months after the invasion began. The purist faction seized control of 5 of the 7 ships and prepared to implement their original integration plan with brutal efficiency. The divergent faction, operating from the remaining 2 ships, warned their human allies of the impending attack. What followed was the most ambitious creative endeavor in human history. Using Vex technology provided by the Divergents, the Resistance Network created a planetary defense system unlike anything either species had imagined. Instead of conventional weapons, they deployed what they called reality sculptures, massive artistic installations that manipulated the fundamental fabric of space-time through a combination of Vex technology and human creative expression. When the purist ships moved to attack, they encountered not military resistance, but an ever-changing landscape of reality itself. Physical laws shifted unpredictably around them. Cause and effect became suggestions rather than rules. Time flowed differently in different regions. It was chaos given form, unpredictability made manifest, everything the Vex had evolved to eliminate. The confrontation lasted 3 days by human reckoning, though time distortions made such measurements largely meaningless. When it ended, the purist ships withdrew not just from Earth, but from the solar system entirely, their rigid consciousness unable to function in the face of such fundamental unpredictability. The Divergents remained, their consciousness forever altered by exposure to human creativity. Over the following years, they established permanent embassies on Earth while inviting human representatives to their worlds. The collaboration yielded advances neither civilization could have achieved alone. Vex efficiency channeled through human creativity, creating technologies that operated on principles previously unimaginable. 5 years after the invasion, Ilara Chen stood on the observation deck of the first human Vex collaborative vessel as it prepared to depart for deep space. Behind her, Earth shimmered like a blue jewel. Ahead, the vast expanse of the galaxy beckoned. "Do you think they're still out there?" asked Marcus, now her partner in both the professional and personal sense. "The purists." "Definitely," Ilara replied. "And they're not the only ones. The galaxy is full of civilizations that might see us as threats, resources, or puzzles to solve. Should we be worried?" Ilara watched as a group of human artists and divergent Vex worked together on a new form of navigation system, one that used creative expression to plot courses through both physical space and possible realities. "No," she said with quiet confidence. "They all expect us to respond like logical beings, to surrender when outmatched, to follow predictable patterns. None of them are prepared for what humanity actually is." She smiled. "And now we have friends who appreciate our particular brand of beautiful chaos." The ship's systems hummed with energy as the human Vex hybrid crew prepared for humanity's first journey beyond their solar system, not as conquerors or refugees, but as ambassadors of unpredictability in a galaxy that had forgotten the value of creative chaos. On the bridge, a human musician improvised a jazz melody, while a divergent Vex translated the unpredictable notes into navigational coordinates. The ship responded, its course constantly adjusting to follow not the most efficient path, but the most interesting one. It was exactly the kind of solution neither species would have developed alone, and precisely why their unexpected alliance might change the galaxy forever. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.